Hi, Pam.
Hello there.
Well, thank you so much for joining us at the Misfit Playbook interview series. You were one of the original Misfits at the first Misfit conference. Well, I
I
think you are
was
a
I was
very,
I was the first speaker at the first was it the first Misfit, I think? OMG.
yes, you were the very first speaker at the very first Misfit, which is why we're so happy to have you here, among other reasons. Um, so, uh, as Nelson was just saying, the point of this interview series is to talk with other misfits about the misfit principles and then about ways that we can help people start to live those principles. And everyone has a different take on that. So you've had a chance to look through some of the principles and understand some of the principles. And out of all that, which one is resonating with you that you'd like to share and talk about? Or I guess there could be two, but we probably only have time for one.
Yeah, there's one that's influenced by two. And so to me, it's about collaborate. I love that that is one of the principles because that's actually the heart and soul of everything that my work is about and really the next stage of my own body of work. And it's something that I've thought long and hard about and that I've worked really hard to integrate into the work that I've done. And so when you think of it, where to start, in the field of work that I'm in for really like the last 20 years is in helping people in various work environments figure out how to create good work, feel good about what they're creating, feel good about how they're communicating with each other at a broad level. So whether that's doing work in an organization where sometimes you have, communication that's kind of screwed up or hidden agendas or things like that, or whether you are an entrepreneur that's working at your kitchen table on some small project that you're trying to do, it is essential that you involve other people because when you're in a process of working, besides maybe some kind of view where you have an anonymous funder for your art that just sends you money into your bank account where you can just peacefully create art on your own, which probably would be a wonderful situation, right, for some people. But for most of us, the process of actually creating our work involves all kinds of engagement with others and collaboration. So that can be a really wonderful process. That can be a very overwhelming process for people. And what I get excited about is that there are some very core principles that you can start to think about that will help you understand how to collaborate.
So you had mentioned that this one is actually influenced or informed by other two. What are the other two principles
Well,
that are influencing this?
actually, the other one that I thought about, and it was more in the spirit of thinking of how can you begin to immediately take direct action on this principle of collaboration, and that to me is about local first. So, I live in the suburbs of Mesa, Arizona. So it's a little housing development with a park in the middle, and there are a bunch of families and there are a bunch of kids that are running around. And so, one of the things that we've done at our house, first of all, because we have kids, Angela's 7 and Josh is 10, and we love kids. We love our kids to have friends and to feel really comfortable having people come into our house. So, one of the things that we think about and talk about very consciously as a family is creating an environment in our home where people feel good, in particular other kids, but often their parents too, feel good coming in, and where we have some ways in which we choose to engage that allow everybody to really feel good and feel safe, which is a core principle. If you think about any kind of collaboration, you want to feel safe, you want to feel heard. And so uh, knowing anybody who is familiar with, 10-year-old boys, for example, for Josh's cohort, that they're running with. Very often, what I see in other places and other homes is boys that are like smashing against the windows and wrestling and throwing balls in the house. And definitely, we get a lot of wrestling and things like that. But one of the things that we do in particular in our home, my husband is Navajo, and a lot in Navajo traditional beliefs that your home is representing the womb. So it represents the core of the womb where you come into your home and it's the place in which you can really grow and you can feel safe. So we talk about that. We talk about that with our kids' friends that come over. When they slam the door, they're kind of banging something against the wall. It's not just screaming at them and telling them not to do it. We'll all come and sit down, in our room where we have Daryl's traditional medicine, and we'll say, this is the way that we think about our home. This is why we really actually think about this as really being a living being, and the kind of feeling that we want to have in here. If you think about this as being your grandma, that you're not going to like slam into your grandma, you might break her ribs. We want a place where you feel comfortable. Inside this home, we don't call each other an idiot. We don't use terms that are going to be derogatory. We're not going to be making somebody feel uncomfortable. So it's just like tiny little things like that of being conscious about the kind of environment that we set up in our home that has life altering, tear inducing, amazing results. And it's so amazing to me. Just the other day, my husband has been teaching my son and some of his friends about building a fire from scratch, because my son's going to get ready to go through his young man ceremony in a couple years, which is a 4-day ceremony in Navajo ceremony. And so he's been working really carefully with these young men. And within that tradition, building your own fire represents how it is that you understand working with your life. So when you have a fire going and you use a stick in order to kind of move the coals around, one of the things he told the boys was that, the fire really represents your life, and the stick, the poking stick, represents your planning. So how it is that you're actually making your plans as you go through the fire is how you'll think about life. And then when it comes to their understanding and relationship with females, that the fire also represents the female. So a core part of the ceremony that a young man goes through is in being able to create a spark, create the fire, and then carefully kind of tend it so that he can build it up. It's representing that crystal fire, the spark, but which is also the female. And he's learning, how is it that I can treat this person with great care and respect, knowing there's amazing power. Navajo culture is a matriarchy, and so it really, the female is at the center of the home. So it's just a little example of this amazing experience. As I watched these boys, it was incredible to see their care, their focus, their understanding, the way in which they were behaving in that environment was so amazing to see, working with each other, collaborating with each other. They're boys that come from different families and ethnic backgrounds and everything. And I just thought, this is it. Like, this is at the heart of the spirit and essence of what it is that we want to create. And it doesn't have to be some big, there's ways in which we can build community online, but just like using your own home, even just with your own family or with your partner, and saying, how are we actually creating an environment in order to be collaborating effectively? I just get clearly massively excited
Yes, I hear you.
about that principle.
One of the things I like about what you're saying is the examples that you're giving are very, very personal examples. So I think so often you think of the word collaboration, it's a big corporate kind of word. We don't necessarily think of that when we think of our homes, but yet the example that you give makes it, I think, easier to then look at that as a metaphor for bringing it into other types of communities and other types of collaboration. If you think of your business partners as a sacred place as well, and that business is a fire that you're tending, how can you tend that fire with gentleness and consciousness? So it kind of starts small, but it expands to global very, very quickly with that metaphor.
It's so true, and it really is. It that having that perspective is one I find that is so useful, and it's probably the metaphor that we can use for every single one of these principles, because really the place where I think we can actually have the strongest manifestation of the kinds of behaviors and experiences that we want. If we're living by these principles, it means that we're going to be behaving a certain way and showing up in the world and creating things in the world that we want. So in order to do that, the first place that you always start is with ourselves. How are we actually applying these principles to ourselves, just within ourselves personally? And then from there, how are we bringing it to our next most intimate circle, which is our family, whatever our family circle is? And then after that, how are we bringing it out into our neighborhood? And then after that, how are we bringing it to work? So um, it definitely, I think, has that kind of application. And the principles that you can think of when you're doing something like looking at building community for yourself within your business. Um, if you extend the thought, as I do, that your clients and customers and partners are all part of your community, that defining the parameters around, what do I believe? What are my values? What are ways in which I'm going to be interacting with people? How can I be attracting people who share those similar values? How can I create an environment where they feel respected and heard and they feel safety and really tune into to paying attention to what each person's individual need is? Those are all principles I think you can start to use as you build your community. And that's um, it's really interesting. Like, I think I'm so used now to building community and having work interactions that are based on people who truly do want to connect, that it's really jarring sometimes when I'm walking into a situation. I've been doing some new work of walking into bigger companies, maybe organizations that have real people in them. I mean, people are everywhere, but the organizational structure might be such in which it's not really safe to be having such open, sometimes personal communication. And it just, I feel like I'm in a foreign land sometimes, and I have to remember, okay, there actually is a path into building a personal connection with these folks, but I need to be understanding and respecting how collaboration might happen. What do they need to feel safe? What's the way that I can begin to engage with them that makes sense within this particular environment? Now I'm going into their home. So I'm not going to be bringing my own agenda about how they should be operating. I want to be respectful about how things happen in their home and figure out how to communicate, build community there.
Yeah, if you kind of walk into a let's say a large corporation with that type of structure you're talking about and just march on in being vulnerable and authentic and open, it might feel very unsafe to those people. So you have to kind of meet them where they're at and maybe, start small. But at the same time, what you're saying is, in a way, the first step is to go within yourself and to think of yourself as a community and how, even when you think of the voices in your head and just how are you going to treat yourself? And that's the place to start. And from there, knowing yourself well enough, it expands out, so it's kind of looking both directions and looking outward to your outer communities, but also looking inward to yourself as well.
It's really true. My husband always says it's so funny. It's what he's been teaching our kids ever since they were really tiny. And because we're on video, I can demonstrate, but he'll have them put their arms like this in a circle and say, this is you, this is your inner circle, and nobody gets to come inside the circle. So mom, dad, friends, like this is just you. This is your circle for yourself. This is your spirit. This is your essence. And when they were really little, he'd ask them, who do you love? And they'd say, I love you, daddy, or I love you, mommy. And he'd say, wait a minute, you first. And so now whenever you ask them that question, they always say, I love me. I love me first. And I love mom and I love dad. And it's a very, um, boy, we could go all metaphysical about it. There's something
It's important
that
though.
is, I mean, there are communication boundaries, there are energetic boundaries when you start to talk about going out in the world and doing work. For me as a coach, where every day I'm talking to people, or as a facilitator or community builder, often I'm walking into all kinds of situations where people are feeling all kinds of different emotions. Sometimes there's all kinds of energy coming at you. And it's really important to make sure that you're grounded and you're centered yourself. My friend Hiro Boga calls it your own inner kingdom. This is your sovereign domain right here. So outside that, people can be saying things to you and they can have all their energy, but when you don't have that circle and you're engaging with people and everything is just coming directly into you, that's when you can start to get exhausted. That's when you start kind of picking up the stress. That's when you can take things really personally, like reading the reviews that somebody might have for your book, or reading YouTube comments for something that you so carefully prepared and put out in the world. We need to first have that very intact, firm circle where we're good with ourselves, and no matter what happens, no matter what how we perform or anything to do with what we actually produce, we need to really feel good and connected with ourselves. And I think that's the essence of then being able to be a really wonderful collaborator outside in the community.
It always starts with yourself, just like you started out saying it starts with your own home. so that you can take the sense of yourself and then move it out to working with your kids or having, in a way, you're talking about sacredness, the sacredness of your home, the sacredness of yourself, the
Yes.
sacredness of everything. And I think I had you just reminded me, a friend of mine just said, no matter what it is you're doing, bless it. And you choose whatever word you want in there, but you're choosing it, so choose to see it as something sacred and bless it as you do it.
I love that. I love that.
Hmm.
I think that just generally creates a well-being, and it's nothing, everybody has totally different views. It's not about a particular spiritual practice or religion or anything. It's about you just having clarity and connection with yourself in whatever way feels really true to you, and then being very clear as to, what are your boundaries, and when you notice that somebody might behave in a certain way or say something that you don't feel is acceptable, how are you going to stand up and communicate that? How are you going to make sure that you're clear as to, you know, what's okay in this house and what's not, to further our house metaphor.
Yes, and house, right? We do our air quotes, right?
That's right, the house.
Define your house today. Um, well, one of the things that we wanted to talk about here too is to give people like some plays, because the concept of the Misfit Playbook is to talk about a principle like collaboration and then say, okay, here's 5 or 6 things that you can go out and like try, maybe over the course of a month or two or so, or a week, whatever it is. So, I mean, we could sit and have this great conversation, and I would talk with you all day. But if we had to tell our misfit friends, maybe 4 or 5 things that they could actually practice to get this sense of collaboration that you're talking about, do you think we could at least give them a few step by steps to play with?
Sure. So I'd say, one is to take the time. If you live by yourself, it's okay just to do it for yourself. But if you live with others, to take the time to write down a list, and you could do it individually or you could do it together, collectively, and talk about what kind of feeling do we want to have in this home? What what's going to feel what feels like safety to us in this home? How do we want to make sure that we're doing things to really treat our home environment in a good way? Everything from painting the walls to watering the plants to, picking up dirty laundry or something like that. So take some time to reflect on it individually and then have a discussion with your family. um, as a parent, for those of you who might be listening who have kids, it's an extremely powerful exercise when you start to listen to each individual member of your family express what it is that they need to feel safe and good inside your home. So I think it's a really worthwhile thing to do, and it might spur some kind of thinking when you realize that starting environment is the base from which you then end up, doing all your work in the world, that you may look around and say, wow, I haven't really been paying a lot of attention to this home, and I've just kind of been throwing things everywhere. Maybe I want to get rid of stuff like our minimalist friends, right? Maybe I want to clean things up and wash the windows and take care of it. So I think that's one concrete exercise that you can look at. A second very specific thing when it comes to really building community and collaborating for those people who have a business is in taking an assessment and thinking about the core principles on which you begin to build a community when you have a business is based on you understanding first, um, what are you about? What's the purpose of your business? Why are you there? What problems are you trying to solve? Who are the people who you really want to be serving? What are your particular business objectives that you might have for the next 12 months? So, we want to deliver this new service, we want to be providing a new conference. Um, you first actually want to get clarity when you're building community and connection with a business endeavor, with your work endeavor, on really, what you're about, who you're serving, and what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish on the business side. And then a simple recommendation for those that already are in business is to reach out when you think about people who might fit in some of the main categories of your core customers, your core avatars, your favorite clients, people who you like to serve. And begin to reach out and just talk to them and find out what are they about? Like what brought them to work with you? What is their life like? What's important to them? What do they need? And I think the favorite question would be, how can I help you? Is there any way that I can just support you in whatever way that really has nothing, doesn't have to have anything to do with the business that you're providing them? It's not, how can I give you even more excellent customer service? It's not that business question. It's just,
Yeah.
for you as a person, I really appreciate that we've been working together for a long time. What do you need? Is there anything, do you need like a new tool to change your garbage disposal? Do you need an introduction somewhere? Are you like single and you're looking for a mate? Like, is there anything that I can do to help? And just begin to have that conversation. And because you've done the thinking about really creating a community that will be helping you to create this self-sustaining business, right? Then that to me is something that's going to start all of the wonderful creative ideas of just getting people more engaged. And that's definitely at the heart of what we experience and talk a lot about at Misfit, is just this deep personal sense of connection that then very often can move over into helping each other also in a professional setting.
You can do that also, not just like with your clients, but like say within larger corporations when you have a team of people, oftentimes a virtual team. To have that, so how can I help you? If you're a leader or a project manager or a manager in a corporation, we forget sometimes in these larger organizations that it's people. We're not resources, we're people.
It's so important and it's very powerful. And I've seen it over and over in such a positive way. I've had some of my most profound, amazing personal conversations with people that I met in corporate environments when I was a consultant to large corporations. And it's just taking the time to be talking to people who are in your work environment, talking to everybody, getting to know everybody's name, the cleaning crew who comes in at night, and the receptionist at the front desk, and the person in the corner office who, nobody may ever talk to. It really does make a big difference. And I've seen it. I mean, I'm one of these um, people where I'm not totally anti-corporate. I don't think it's all about just, having the man having his boot in our neck. Are there some systemic issues that can create sometimes crazy, ineffective culture? Absolutely. But humanity is everywhere. And sometimes I think we simplify things too much, and we close off the possibility that actually we can make quite significant change and build community wherever we are. And there, as I said, there have been some really life-changing situations where, because of really leaning in and paying attention to who that human being was, it means that we were able to, accomplish some amazing work together.
Wonderful. Well, we're coming to the end of our interview time, so I want to first thank you very much for your time and in your wisdom and sharing it with not only the Misfits, but with everyone else who's listening to the Misfit interviews. And is there any last piece of advice that you'd want to give to our Misfits before we close? And I ask you my final question that we always ask everyone.
Yes. Um, yeah, I just want to say how much I'm excited to be part of this community, and I can't wait. I'm just crossing my fingers and toes that in the next year that we have the conference that I'll be able to attend as well, because I just have such a fond connection with the community, and there's so many special elements, and it's one of the communities that I just feel most um, personally connected to.
It's a phenomenal community. I'm grateful for it too. Um, so, with that in mind, because we have such a wonderful, wonderful group of people out there, the last thing that we always ask our people that we're talking to in the interview is, who in the Misfit community would you like to hear from on this interview series?
Oh man,
We
it is
stumped you
like a
there,
test
huh?
because then I have to remember.
Yeah, you gotta
Okay,
remember all
I'm
these.
going to take the easy way out. I'm not sure if you've
Uh,
talked to her already, but one of my dear friends and past clients, Rachel Rogers, who
ah,
I know came to Misfit last year,
okay.
is funny and smart and deep and has great things to share. So I would love to hear
Rachel
Rachel
Rogers.
on one of these
All right.
interviews.
Rachel Rogers, be warned, we will be calling you and we'll be asking you to come and be interviewed because Pamela Slim said so. So, but thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time. It's been lovely talking with you.
Thank you. Likewise.